essentially a brand insights company. It measures consumer insights for brands and has been doing this since 2010, for the last 10 years. We believe in the fact that there is no possibility for a brand to sell anymore. You cannot sell to clients. Why does that happen? Consumers cannot be sold to like it used to happen in the many years before. You know, if you remember the Eureka Forbes days, on a Sunday morning, one Eureka Forbes person will come into your house and he'll knock on the door and request you for a glass of water. And in the Indian families, you never refuse a glass of water. So they would get a glass of water and you don't give it outside. So you call the person in and then the person starts selling the Eureka Forbes vacuum cleaner and several other products that they had. That was selling. You had to make a forced entry into the house and the hearts of the people. But that was a time when India was just going through its changes. It did not have both the disposable income. It was not in the growth that it is in the current phases. And today it is quite different. Today about 65% of the Indian population is below the age of 30 years. Very, very young. They've been born into an entire environment where there is plentiful of things, both money, opportunity, choices. That's the 60% of India's population, urban and rural put together. When they have choices, they also have aspirations. They are connected globally, meaning the internet has connected them globally. Those of you who have nieces, nephews, children who are 14 to 20, you will often struggle, or even if you know somebody who's 14 to 16 years of age, you will struggle to understand them. It is not easy. Their mindsets are different, their choices are different, their fulfillments are different, their aspirations are different. Now, when you look at the age group between 21 to, let's say, 29, this entire age group typically being called millennials, those who have been born in 1990 and later, below 30. They are people who have kind of only kept one interest in their mind, one singular interest. That is their own interest. But it's not selfish. It is not selfish. I think somebody over here is below 29 and therefore is smiling. So their interests are there, but they are not selfish. Their interest means I am not going to go for the traditional interest. I will go for that which interests me. And study after study, we understand, we see the consumers, they always have a very strong commitment to whatever they believe. So it could be anything. It could be anything right from the type of education to the fact that many 14-year-olds want to become bloggers today. Their aspirations have become that I would like to become a big blogger. So these are the kind of new age aspirations which the family fails to understand often. There are education needs which have changed. I mean, I think one of the most, I should not say this, but detested subject matter today has become mathematics, which used to be a doyen of our education time. I'm 51 years old, so you can kind of imagine my generation used to be pushed towards maths. Today it's become that should I do it, should I not do it? There are so many choices. So what I was coming to is that many of these brands that we are talking to are born 5 decades, 6 decades old. It's like my age, 51. And I'm trying to understand this 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old person who's, let's say, in this context, my nephew, niece, and I'm unable to understand them. The same thing happens with a 50-year-old brand when it's trying to understand its consumer. TRA speaks to about 400, 500 brands every year. And in that time, the maximum number of people who have responded to me, who are the brand custodians, those who actually end up deciding for the brand, many things. We have found that the often repeated statement is, "Mujhe mera consumer samajh mein nahi aata." I do not understand my consumer, which is a very hushed tone that they talk in. Now there are many reasons for that, because brands which have been born in the earlier ages, when India used to be completely dependent on the brand to get the right product, today it has become dependent on the consumer to decide the right product. They have not been able to change many often. So this study, or rather the studies that we do, measures one thing, and that's called buying propensity, the keenness of the consumer to buy. Now, why is this different from selling? Selling is from a brand-centric approach, which means the brand looks at it and says, I want to sell. When you look at it from a consumer-centric approach, it changes completely. It says that, how can I help the consumer buy? And the difference is entirely as to what is the pivot on which does your brand stand. You've all heard of terms like, brand loyalty. Brand loyalty के बारे में सुना होगा. Brand loyalty means, is the consumer loyal to the brand? Consumer is paying the money, consumer is going to buy the product, and you expect the consumer to be loyal. Where is the logic in that? That used to be earlier the case. Today, the language of brand loyalty means, is the brand loyal to the consumer? It has changed completely. Whether the one who's selling has to be loyal, the buyer does not have to be loyal. This is the language of change that has happened, the rhetoric that has changed. So therefore, I'll come to what TRA does, and therefore we can go on to the report. TRA essentially measures the consumer's keenness to buy. But what is the consumer's keenness to buy? It is measured by two things, which is called brand trust and brand desire. Brand trust, which in Hindi means bharosa, and brand desire, which means, the ichha that they have. So brand trust is essentially a measure of the transactive element. Today, all you August people, important people have come here because you trust that this environment will give you something back in return in terms of a story. We do the same. We come out with this study with the same imagination that it's going to help so many people. That is a trust, a transactive element. Any transaction of emotional, which is love, it could be of transaction of information like we are doing now, or it could be a real product. That is to do with trust. The other element, so we come out with that study in the beginning of the year. We came out with it in June of 2019, and around this time we come out with the desire study. So trust at one end and desire at other end gives us the combination to give buying propensity. We understand buying propensity. So let's understand as to how does this happen. We go to our partners in this particular study are ISI, which is Indian Statistical Institute, which is the premier institute of the country for statistics. It's a government of India body, and the dean of the ISI is always the president of India. So whoever the president becomes the dean automatically. It's a very, very important and prestigious institute. They don't do private work, private like us. They don't engage with the companies like us. You would not hear of ISI partnering anybody. But when we went to them in 2010, we told them and we urged them that this is a very important thing that we are doing. We are understanding brand trust and brand desire. And naturally, after a lot of conversation, which moved around 2 or 3 areas, the main area being that when a brand is successful, that means it has communicated well. When a brand is successful, that means it is creating opportunity of jobs, of factories, of more people buying that particular brand. A good brand, it is not necessary that it will sell well. It has to also communicate well in order for it to be accepted by consumers. But if a brand is just talking brand loyalty, that means consumer has to be loyal. It's like saying that when there are two affectionate people and one lovers if you want, and in that one case you say that other person has to be loyal to me. It has to be mutual loyalty. That's what is loyalty in human terms. In brand loyalty also it means the same. You'll only get loyalty when you give it to the consumer. So we go to ISI as the partner. They are the ones who give us the statistical reference points, which makes this an India-based study. So we've been going to between 14 to 16 cities every year. We go to 14 to 16 cities, talk to consumer influencers. Consumer influencers are the 10% of people who influence the balance 90% on all our buying decisions. I'm sure you will know that if you have to buy a mobile phone, a new one, and you don't want the old brand that you had, typically you might go and ask a few people. Those that know about that particular mobile phone. What do you think? And one person will say X brand, one person will say Y brand. And then suddenly you start putting it into your consideration set. You say, I trust this person. This is the influencer. So we find these influencers. These are very important people who count for a lot for other people. So this 10% of the people who influence the balance 90% is called the consumer influencer. ISI puts in a tag on their age, their income, everything else. So it is actually fixated according to that. Even the 14 cities, how many respondents, that's also decided by ISI. And then we embark on a 4-month face-to-face interviewing of these consumer influencers. This year we've done nearly 1,500 people across these 14 cities who are representative of the 14 cities population. So this is an urban India study. It is not a rural India study. There are extensions possible, but naturally we have to limit it to the geographical area that our keenness of our interest is in terms of consumers. It's an urban India study. It reflects the behavior of urban India consumers. So I'll give you an example. I do this often in most press conferences just to give you an idea. And the questions, so what happens is we have 97 different attributes, intangible attributes of brands with us, which means brand trust has 61 and brand desire has 36. So these are attributes that actually define the character of the brand. What does that mean? If I were to judge, so these are two different things. Often what happens is brands are defined by a rhetoric or a metric of sales, some proxy of sales. So if a brand is doing well, they'll say, sales badha kya? Is the sales gone up? Has the sales gone up? That's when the brand manager will get some credit. But that is like saying brand is actually like the character of a person. Brand is a character. Sales is like the money in the pocket of the person. It is not necessary that the character and the money in the pocket match each other. It may be true that a person of good character also has good money, or a person who has good money has also good character, but it is not automatically true, which means that a sales of a brand is not equivalent, because brand trust and brand desire are like the character of the brand. You cannot say if sales is high, the character is good. Sales can become high by multiple means. Multiple means. Just one of the simplest theories that you will all know is the online discounting schemes. If you find two brands online which are similar and one offers a better discount than the other, two shirt brands for instance, you will find that the one that preference will come in is for the one that is slightly lower priced if the quality is the same. The brands may be different. So that doesn't mean they've chosen a brand, they've actually chosen a price. When they choose a brand, it means that they have bought into the brand. Consumers have bought into the brand. They may not buy it. खरीदने की जरूरत नहीं है. But in the mind, they have bought it. मतलब मन में they've got it inside their heads. So that's what we measure. We measure that particular keenness which allows us to predict their behavior, and therefore we go to brands with this listing. We've been, like I said, doing it for the last 10 years, out of which 6 are the brand trust report. 10 are the brand trust report, 6 are the brand desire report. Now, one of the first things that we wanted to talk about in this area is the degree of difficulty. So, who do we go to? Every year, we used to go to the corporate consumer influencer, ISI, and we decided that the person who is in the corporate, जो कहीं पे काम करता है, this is about, the company has to be 50 crores, 200 people, very large criteria. So wherever they are working, we found that they are influencers. But last year, we added one very, very important criteria, which is the home influencer. So today we have 20% home influencers, 23% corporate working women, and the balance 53% is working men. As we go by, the influence of the woman is equivalently high, and you cannot judge products by just deciding as to a working population of women alone, and that's the reason for this change. So I'm going to now take you through some of the listings that are available, then we can go into other areas. So this is the first time you have press releases in front of you, but I will anyway tell you about the detailing. It's a little interesting in that sense. So Samsung mobiles, Samsung has brands in every category, right from washing machine to microwaves to consumer electronics, diversified. So Samsung also has mobile phones. Sorry. Samsung mobiles is the leader India's most desired brand this year. Now it is significant in many ways. It is the fourth time in 6 reports that it comes out as the most desired brand. So what does it mean? When a brand is repeatedly able to become desired by a large population of urban India, what does that mean? It implies that basically they have been able to understand the psyche, the mental makeup of the Indian consumer to that end. Developing maybe new phones, it could be new features, it could be maybe the right costing, maybe the right product set and the feature set, which creates a brand persona where you look at a particular brand of that category, like in mobile phones, and say that this is something I desire. So I'll give you a small example of myself. I am a traditional OnePlus user. So while affordability is not a criteria, I'm a traditional OnePlus user. So when I go to my phone repair shop, he says, which is the kaunsa wala version laya bhi? 1, 3, 5, 7, kaunsa wala? So I'm definitely one of the better phones for which suited my needs, and I'm not the one who would go for the highest priced phone. I would go for a functionally right phone for my right fit. But over the last years, some of the functionality of the Samsung phone impressed me so much. And I said, I need to have this phone. For the first time, I went beyond the desire criteria. And for a person who studies desire, if desire creeps in, it's a little dangerous, because then I'm getting influenced by the brand's communication. But it was so true. Today, after about a years of use, the brand has been, I'm almost, not able to, inseparable with the brand. And I've become an endorser of the brand. That's the number one in this particular list. The other important part about Samsung before I close this is the fact that for the first time in the history of our reports, there are 3 product categories in which Samsung has come in the top 10. So it is number 1, of course, like I told you, in mobile phones. In consumer electronics, all of consumer electronics, that is also called durables in one way, it is number 4 and number 1 in that category and number 4 in all India. And at 7th rank is Samsung televisions in top 10 of India. It is also leading in televisions. This is the very first time that such a thing has happened. So it is a phenomenal feat for this one brand in one sense. But enough about Samsung, and let me move on. I will move on to the other parts, which is to talk about who occupies number 2, 3 and 4. And when you look at the second brand, it is iPhone. iPhone is number 2 in our list. Now again, last year it was at number 3, ranked 3, and this year it is ranked 2. It is only a climb of 1 rank. But I'll tell you 2 things about the climb of any brand in the top 10. It's very, very difficult. Because once you establish this top leadership, the second and third to come up, because every brand is trying very hard. So it is not possible to overcome. It's like Usain Bolt having a lead against you, and you are as fast as Usain Bolt, who's already the fastest in the world. Always stays ahead 2 steps. So it's very difficult, but despite that, to gain 1 rank is phenomenal for iPhone. But even more phenomenal is the fact that from 2015, it has been steadily climbing ranks. It was at 290th rank in 2015, came up to 92 rank in 2017, and now it has come to rank 2. So it's a very important movement for the brand itself. The brand that's ranked 3rd is again, like I told you, this is Samsung in consumer electronics. That's the 3rd. Rank 4th is by, again, this year is disruption. Everywhere there is disruption, and that's what we must notice. That means Sony Entertainment Television, the GEC, the Hindi GEC, Hindi General Entertainment Channel, has come in at 4th rank. We never see a entertainment channel come into top 10, top 20. It never comes. But this year it has. So it shows many, many things. So choices, the reason that a brand can come into a top list is because many brands fall out, and some people are not running the race and therefore they are out. That means they have not been chosen. Or one could run faster, to use the same Usain Bolt example, run faster and therefore climb ranks. But Sony Entertainment or Sony TV has been able to come on to a very high jump, 594 ranks jump. This is not normal at all, and we have to find these abnormal items to say what's happening in the world as general. If you study the consumers' choices of brands, you have a very good outlook on their viewpoint of the world. So they actually reflect on that as well. So you've got the very 594 ranks jump and therefore moves up. Maruti Suzuki is at rank 5 this year. Maruti Suzuki is of course a veteran brand in the country. It almost remains steady. Last year it was at 7th rank. Earlier also it was in the similar 8th rank, 7th rank. And it has just moved up a couple of ranks and remained in the same steady place as it usually does. One important brand that I would like to bring to your notice is Dell. Dell has been ranked at number 6, and this is a very important rank again after Maruti Suzuki, and it is essentially to say that this laptop manufacturer leads in laptops and has done a significant movement forward of what it's been able to do so far. As I told you also, Samsung is at 7th in televisions. That's already there. 3 brands of Samsung are there. Amul milk. Amul is of course about 7 decades old, 70 years old approximately. This year I think they are targeting something like 45,000 crores. It's a cooperative based out of Anand. All the people sit out of Anand. The chairman of Amul is a farmer. I mean, he's a dhoti wearing farmer. Dhoti wearing, not in a bad sense, but I mean to say traditional dress wearing. He doesn't wear this. He doesn't have to. Because it is owned by the farmer. All the farmers. It's a cooperative. 45,000 crores. Last year it did something like 33,000 crores. To this climb, 12,000 crores in a year is not an easy task. Mr. R.S. Sodhi, the veteran, heads it. And this company has been able to innovate and climb again and again and grow in a dairy sector which is not easy to grow. Still keeping its brand alive. How many of you remember the Amul Girls ads? Those hoardings that come out and then you see that and you smile and you're waiting for the next one. It is such a mnemonic thing. It's been there for 70 years. The girl doesn't grow, but your love always grows. That's the way that they've been able to connect. They are relevant in every sector. They almost have, I think, if I'm nothing else, 30 to 40 types of cheese today. Why I want to dwell on this one particular brand is, it has truly not become, Doodh is a product. You can buy it from your gauwala, you can buy it from a package, and brand truly doesn't matter. It is what you go through with that experience of the milk. It is the kind of subliminal senses. I know of families where a child will decide the brand of the milk because there is a certain smell, flavor that the child likes or doesn't like. And therefore the family's milk will change. And they have been across the country, whether it be south, east, north, or west. But more importantly, they are in 45 other countries that they've got. It's an enormously growing brand, and therefore, and as you might know, they have launched their new sub-brand called True, TRU, which is their juices brand, which is yet to make it to the list, not coming to the list. Just last year it was launched. And they're also launching potato snacks. Dairy has saturated. Dairy is a saturated market because almost every house in India gets milk. 70 years ago, India was milk deficient. Today, India exports, largest exporter of milk. That's what is the revolution of Amul in one way, and therefore the extra couple of minutes that I took on the brand. Honda Activa, the scooter brand from Honda, which is a traditional brand, which is not a new brand, has been at number 9, is at number 9, and shows many things. So I will tell you why the Activas and the Amul milks climb on. It is a very interesting story in the face of the current economic scenario, because consumers are viewing it in a particular way. Their movement has started changing. If you look at luxury cars and you look at other things, the choices are changing from luxury cars to hatchbacks. So they are not showing that much of interest in the things that are going to be stable. If you look at the BFSI sector, there is this 11% drop in the number of brands in the BFSI sector. There were 66 brands last year. There are only 54 brands this year. And almost many insurance companies are out. Many banks are out of the list. What is it doing? When you look at, so consumers are reflecting, when we ask them a question, we ask them questions like, name 3 brands which are caring or creative. Now in a scenario when you find that the banks are suffering consequences of everyday existentialist consequences, they don't know whether they will exist tomorrow or not, many of them. or what changes may happen to them in terms of either a government or a law or something to that effect, or a merger. If they don't know that, what is the major problem that ends up happening is that consumers stop choosing that brand as a desired brand automatically. Not because they know. When we say which is a creative brand, they don't find that sector creative. It doesn't come into their mind. So that's how we ask them questions. They name 3 brands on it, so that's how it does. And Hyundai, the four-wheeler manufacturer, is the 10th brand in the list, and also the second car manufacturer brand after Maruti Suzuki. I'll tell you some things about the largest number of categories, and this is an important way to judge it. It has traditionally always been like that. So 2 categories. We have super categories, which means like F&B, food and beverage, and we have categories. Categories is the sub. We don't like to call anything sub, therefore we only call it categories. The categories are like aerated beverages or biscuits. Food and beverage, biscuits. The food and beverage and the FMCG contribute to 28.8%, almost 29% of the brands. What does that mean? These are usually they contribute about 25, so they are now about 4% more. But what is the meaning of this? The meaning of this is that there's a large amount of focus on everyday. F&B and FMCG are everyday.